So how much should you be public on the internet? That's a real tricky thing to think about, and I've really changed my mind on this as I've grown as a person, and I want to talk about that. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Mastak. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward to help you out as much as I possibly can. So I started out creating this whole sharing economy editing platform. It's just an writing editing platform. You can check that out. That's what reciprocity.com is. The E is written with a 3, and it's sort of based on this. I had this sort of vision that was going to be based on, reciprocity, where you help other people out, and then eventually you learn how to do a good job, and you can, convert credits into money if you're helping other people out, or use those credits to get your own work edited. But, as I started doing this, by the way, thanks so much for listening. So as I started doing this, I realized that I couldn't get, I wasn't getting traction in building this thing, right? So I built this thing, got contract developers, you might have heard the story. And then as I built this thing, I realized that you need to build an audience, a following, to actually get, traction on the internet. Otherwise, nobody cares, right? You're this kind of lone island because nobody links to your website, and that's how search engines work. Because you need to have this sort of reputation base. It's a reputation-based system where that as people, more reputable people sort of cite your work, quote unquote, cite your work by linking to you, the more popular that your work gets. And search engines, Google and all that kind of stuff try to mitigate that problem, but it still exists. It's sort of built within it. If you built this thing, you think it's interesting, nobody's ever going to pay attention to it. Nobody cares because it's an island. Nobody's sort of citing this thing because the reason is you'll never be found. You can search for it, it's not going to show up anywhere, right? And that's exactly what happened. And it's searched sharing economy editing platform, never show up. It happened like that for a very long time. And so I started being, somebody said, well, why don't you do YouTube videos? So I did how-to videos of the platform, and they, they're a little sketch, but that's a YouTube video. I did the best I could. But I realized, as I started doing these, I started doing a little bit more offbeat things, talking about academia, different things like that. I was trying to figure out, how do you do this, right? And then as I did, I realized that as I did more and more, we get more and more open. And now I'm really open. There's some things I don't disclose. I want to make sure that, a lot of things with my family and stuff like that. They're just young right now, and my wife probably would not appreciate the fact if she was really public and stuff. So I don't do that. Every once in a while I sort of hint to it, and nobody really wants to do that. I'm careful about my youngins. Because there's some people that are not nice, right? And that's what comes down to in terms of the public domain is. And there is a lot of people that are not nice in this world, right? Most people are. So you could sort of group people into 3 different buckets, right? So there are people that are not nice, which is probably the bottom 5%. Then there's vast majority of people don't care, which is 90%, right? Nobody cares. And nobody's ever going to pay attention. Nobody, they might watch something that you do, and then they're going to be like, whatever. That kind of thing, or yeah, that was nice, and move on to their other day. And then there's the 5% that really do care, and they really get into it, right? And they really get what you're doing and all that kind of stuff, right? So and that's really, the numbers are probably even worse than that. It's probably really 5% are mean, 94% don't care, and then 1% actually does care, right? Like, it's really, like, if you look at the statistics, and I can even boil those statistics down to, like, talk to you about this. This is the whole, the science behind it. It's like click-through rates and all that kind of stuff. It's really like 1% or less are ever going to do something that they care enough to even do something. But then, do they care enough to go really far and deep into it? No. That's even really a lot smaller, right? So the numbers are really quite spectacular. And you have to sort of realize this, like, as you're doing this, that for the vast majority of it, right? And so this is where, should you be more public? It really depends on your comfort level, right? So people are going to make fun of you. They're going to be, nasty, and it could be people that you even know. Very much so, right? Like, they can use anonymous accounts, and that's probably at the beginning, and probably for the first while, it's probably going to be people that you know, and they're going to use anonymous accounts and be really, or, relatively close to you, and they're going to be mean. I remember, that happening. I didn't know who the people were, but, obviously nobody would have known about this thing early on, and you get anonymous comments, and you're like, ouch. and when you start out, it really does hurt, right? For those first couple years, it really does hurt. Unless you're really kind of a dysfunctional person, you're going to absorb it. And still today, it never feels good when people are really nasty, do silly comments like, you're ugly and all that kind of stuff, which is totally pointless. But all those kind of things, it hurts, right? And so you have to sort of protect yourself on dealing with this. And so I've actually had to learn to really disregard, really be, hard shell. It's actually been a little daunting. I don't know if daunting's the right word. It's a little, probably more depressing, that I have to keep this sort of hard shell. And, you learn to deal with it. You learn to be, you cut that off, and you're just like, well, whatever. That's their opinion. Can you imagine? I've learned to think about this, and actually listening to Gary Vee, has been Gary Vaynerchuk, who's been doing this a lot longer than I have, and has been helpful. And just sort of thinking about, like, can you imagine how awful of a world that they live in? These people are really, really sad, depressed, awful. They're just in an awful, awful moment in their life that they would actually they would spend effort to be nasty and mean to you. Like, that's just not, like, they're in a really, really bad position. You have to sort of learn that when they're doing it, or when you get that they're just like, my God, who does that, right? Like, I could never do that. I've never, I might have done it once in my entire life, and I'm not proud of it, where I've done that. I can remember it. And, like, for the most part, like, who does that? So they're those who are really pretty dysfunctional, but you're going to bump into them, right? That they're out there, and you have to learn to sort of deal with it. So does the benefit outweigh the cost of being public? So there is a tremendous amount of benefit there, right? Like, there is, and I've done the sort of cost-benefit analysis in my mind, is that there is a lot more opportunity because of it. And, you don't know what those opportunities are, and that happens long in the future, right? Like, I'm benefiting a little bit more at this moment in terms of people reaching out, and it's usually randos, right? Like, you don't know who the people are, and they're going to reach out to you and say, hey, do you want to do this thing or whatever, or, you resonate with people, and they sort of get it, total rando folks, and, those opportunities are there, and it sort of chases you around. So there's an opportunity side, right? That there is opportunities. There's definitely some upside with that. But the other thing I was thinking about, this is, like, probably the more important thing, is, the more open you are, the less, guess is it the less somebody can come after you for something because you didn't sort of disclose that thing, right? Like if you get into all of your messes and your nitty gritty, and I talk about the fact that I had I used to sleep with a board on my leg or boards on my feet when I was growing up. I was in special ed for many years, right? So I was in 5th grade. I didn't have a lot of friends in high school in the beginning of high school anyways. Like grad school was hard for me. It was very hard. It was very lonely. And it was a real struggle. It was difficult. There's a lot of things, and now, right, like I'm pretty open with the fact that there are lots of times where I do feel pretty bummed out and pretty depressed. Discussing these and being open with these in as much as I can, nobody has any sort of leverage over you, right? Like that's the important thing, because what can they say, right? Like, what can they say? Because you've said everything already. You're like, so what? I've already said it. I'm open about it. Yeah, But when I see people, it still feels weird. But it still is like they know more about me than I know about them, and that is okay, right? Like getting to that moment where you're just being completely open and completely honest, and we want to hide things. And I think this is like our shame-based mechanisms. I'm more of lots of people would sort of be fight and they get their back up, but I'm a real when I get sort of stressed, I'm very much shame based. I'm very, very much like hide, that's fight or flight response. I'm very much that hide, run away, freeze response, like threat rigidity response. Very much so. Right, like that is me, and I talk about that, and if people are going to come after me, I'm going to experience that right off the get-go, but they know all of this stuff about me, and maybe that they are going to be use this to me and my to their advantage in the future, but so what? Who cares? I don't want to deal with those people anyways, and I've learned to realize that those people were not good people in my life anyways, so why would you even want to deal with them? And the people that sort of resonate and understand what you're doing and get what you're doing are the ones that I actually want to hang out with. And sometimes that they do want to hang out with, they might have watched something or listened to something that I said, and when they're doing that, they don't necessarily, they're like, okay, I get it, I understand where he's coming from. It might not result in any opportunities, but they understand me because they understand where I'm coming from, right? Like I'm a real ordinary person and really extraordinarily ordinary, plain. Probably I view myself as a lot more of a failure than sort of successful in any sort of way. And some people might view me as a success, depending on what their social situation is. But me as a person, I don't view that, right? Like that's who I am. And that's sort of born into me. And I talk about that this is a really important part of it. And so, other people that feel that way, which I think is, to be honest, I think it's the majority of the people, unless you're like, an ass, those people that sort of have their back up, they're not going to sort of have a real conversation with you. They're the ones those people have all the, problems and stuff, and I don't want to deal with them. But the people that are kind of normal and they get it, they actually want to talk and they want to be open, right? And that's been the weirdest, kind of really fun, interesting thing. And that's where a lot of benefit comes from, is that people look at you differently. They do, right? Like not in the sense of like they're going to give you all these opportunities because they don't have access to them, right? But they just look at you differently. They look at you with kind eyes, that they really do get you a little bit more. And those are really, that's fun. And I think that is really nice. And that's being as open as possible. Nobody's ever going to be like, nobody can say anything about me now, right? They all know what my story is and how I feel. And so what, right? Like, You really do. That's a huge benefit. And then, the third benefit that you couldn't imagine unless you start doing it is very therapeutic. Being open about these things. Now, sometimes I feel like I'm too open in the sense that it kind of makes me dwelly and feel sorry for myself. And that's kind of a downfall of being open. But, for the most part, it's been very therapeutic where I can openly talk about things and, become a lot more open with it. Because I'm naturally a shy, more introverted person. So, you might not know that if you sort of met me on the street, because I always say hi and sort of stuff like that. But I'm nervous around people, right? I have a lot of social anxiety. Especially in groups of more than like 3 or 4. So, this is where I'm coming from, is that there are benefits and you might want to consider them of being open. But yeah, there obviously are some, not so great, disadvantages of doing it as well. But for me, in my own cost calculations or cost benefit calculation in my head, I view it as more of a benefit. In the long run. In the short run, no. In the long run, yes. That there's more of a benefit from doing this. So with that, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care. Oh, do subscribe to the pod. I've got a YouTube channel too. But anyways, do subscribe to the pod. Leave me some comments. I do appreciate it. Take care. And yeah, have a good one. Bye.